She had never felt the weight of her own heartbeat the way she did when she stepped into the quiet, glass-walled cafe on the corner of Winter Street in Boston. Her fingers were trembling, her scarf slightly crooked, and her eyes carried the exhaustion of a woman who had run out of places to hide her pain. Claire wasn't just nervous. She was ashamed, terrified that the man waiting for her might see straight through the mask she'd spent months crafting. At the table sat Andrew Hayes, the 37-year-old CEO everyone in the city admired. But the world didn't know the other story. The widowed father who had learned to survive heartbreak with a daughter depending only on him. And when Claire stepped inside, he immediately sensed that something in her was breaking silently. The tension between their unspoken truths hovered like fog, until Andrew finally lifted his eyes and broke the silence with one simple question that would change everything. If you believe in kindness, compassion, and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to support more stories like this. Claire had come because she had run out of time. She needed help, real help, and though it bruised her pride to admit it, Andrew was her last hope. The world saw Claire as a quiet office assistant in the lobby of Hayes Industries, but no one knew that she had been homeless for the last 3 months, raising her 8-year-old nephew after her sister's sudden passing. She slept in shelters, rotated between church basements, and pretended every morning that she had simply overslept when she reached work late, hair damp from hurried sink washes. But earlier that day, she had received a private message from Andrew's executive email. It wasn't a reprimand, nor a warning, but a request to meet him for a conversation. She had no idea how he found out, no idea what he wanted, and no idea if she was about to lose the one thing keeping her afloat, her job. When she slid into the seat across from him, she barely looked up, her breath coming short and uneven, the shame boiling in her chest. He wasn't dressed like a CEO today. He wore a soft navy sweater under a charcoal jacket, and his brown hair fell slightly out of place, a sign that he had come here from somewhere personal rather than professional. Beside him sat his daughter, Grace, a gentle, quiet girl with long blonde braids who was drawing with colored pencils. Claire felt a sting in her chest when she saw the little girl. She reminded her of her nephew, Ethan, who was waiting back at a volunteer daycare, not knowing where they would sleep tonight. Andrew had been watching Claire for a long moment, searching her expression, observing the tension in her posture, the heaviness in her eyes. He finally leaned forward slightly, his voice low and steady, and asked the question that shattered her remaining composure. "Claire, when was the last time you had a safe place to sleep?" He didn't ask if she was okay. He didn't ask why she kept coming late. He didn't ask what happened. He asked the question she'd prayed no one would notice she was hiding. Claire's eyes instantly filled. She tried to swallow the tears, tried to steady her hands, but her shoulders shook with silent sobs. She hadn't cried in front of another human in months. Andrew didn't push her. He simply waited, letting the truth find its own way out. She confessed, word by word, that she and Ethan had been moving from shelter to shelter, that she had been saving every penny of her paycheck, hoping she could eventually afford a tiny apartment. But her sister's medical debt had swallowed nearly everything she had. She expected pity in Andrew's eyes, or shock, or regret for having hired her. But instead, she saw something else. Recognition. A flicker of a memory that still haunted him, a pain he carried quietly. Grace looked up at her father as if she knew what he was remembering too. 2 years earlier, Andrew had lost his wife, Hannah, to a sudden heart condition. The grief had nearly broken him, leaving him alone with a 4-year-old child and a home full of memories that felt too heavy to breathe in. He knew what it was like to be one person on the outside and another on the inside. He knew what it meant to look stable when everything underneath was collapsing, and he understood what courage it took to survive anyway. He reached into his coat pocket and placed a folded sheet of paper on the table. Claire didn't understand until he slid it toward her, and she saw the printed heading. Hayes Community Housing Initiative, Employee Assistance Grant. She had heard rumors of such a program, but believed it was meant for employees facing natural disasters or medical emergencies. She never imagined she qualified. Her voice cracked as she whispered her disbelief, but Andrew assured her that he had personally reviewed her case. He spoke softly, telling her she had already proven herself more than deserving. Her work ethic, her kindness, her resilience, the quiet strength she carried even when no one was watching. Claire listened as he explained that the grant would cover 3 months of rent for a small apartment owned by the company's housing program. Not only that, but it included living essentials, childcare support for her nephew, and a reassigned work schedule that would give her time to stabilize her life. Each word felt unreal. No one had ever given her more than scraps, more than temporary fixes. And now someone was offering her a real chance, a restart. As Andrew spoke, Grace reached across the table with a small drawing she had finished. It was a picture of 3 people holding hands under a sunny sky. Claire recognized Grace and Andrew immediately, but the third figure made her breath catch. It was a little boy with brown hair, Ethan. Grace smiled shyly, explaining that her dad had told her a new friend might be joining their world soon. Claire clutched the drawing to her chest, unable to hold back her tears, overwhelmed with a sweetness she hadn't felt in years. The cafe was warm and bright, yet Claire felt her knees weaken under the weight of relief. She wasn't being fired. She wasn't being judged. She was being saved. Andrew didn't treat her like an employee in trouble. He treated her like a human being who deserved dignity and care. She realized his question hadn't been out of duty. It was out of empathy, from a man who knew what broken felt like. Over the next week, everything changed. Claire and Ethan moved into a small, cozy apartment in a safe neighborhood with soft, beige walls and freshly cleaned carpets. Ethan immediately loved the place, spinning in circles in the empty living room and declaring with a grin that it smelled like new beginnings. The first night, Claire cried quietly on the sofa, not from fear or despair, but from gratitude so deep it made her chest ache. At work, her coworkers were supportive, though they didn't know the details. She started arriving early, her clothes crisp, her hair neat, her eyes no longer carrying the weight of sleepless nights. Ethan flourished in his daycare, drawing pictures every day of their new home, and Andrew, he checked in gently, respectfully, never overstepping, always making sure Claire understood she wasn't alone anymore. What Claire never expected, however, was how much Grace would become attached to her and Ethan. The little girl, craving warmth after losing her mother, found comfort in Claire's gentle presence. She often visited Claire's desk, showing her drawings, asking about Ethan, or simply sitting quietly with her. Andrew noticed it too, how Claire's calmness soothed Grace, how Ethan brightened her life, how their small, unexpected connection softened the ache that had lived inside them since Hannah's passing. It was slow, quiet, and unspoken, but it was real. And as weeks turned into months, something beautiful began to grow. Not romance, not obligation, but a bond built on respect, shared pain, and healing. Andrew admired Claire's determination, her humility, the way she rebuilt her life brick by brick. Claire began to admire the gentleness behind Andrew's powerful exterior, the tenderness he showed Grace, and the way he always placed kindness before authority. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring more life-changing stories to the world. Before the ending, please take a moment to comment. Kindness still exists. Claire would later say that her life changed the moment Andrew asked her that one question, the moment someone finally saw not her mistakes, not her struggle, but her humanity. And Andrew would say it was the day he remembered something his wife once told him, that sometimes saving someone else is what ends up saving you too. In the end, Claire didn't just find a home. Andrew didn't just offer help. Grace didn't just gain new friends. Together they formed something that felt like family. Unexpected, unplanned, but deeply, quietly healing. And in a cafe on Winter Street, where a nervous woman once sat trembling, a new chapter of their lives had quietly begun.